Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017. It's 7:05 p.m. And as a reminder, all regular school committee meetings are televised and recorded. So I'd like a call to order, please.
Present Barbara Steffen.
Present Katie Dugan.
Present Jean Estino.
Present Ellen Mar.
Present Amanda Sani.
Okay. Pledge of Allegiance is next. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the next item on the agenda is invitation to speak, but we do not have anybody in the audience. So we will move right on to the approval of the warrant. And could I have a motion to approve warrant 17-19S?
So moved.
And could I have a second?
Second.
So that's the second by Mrs. Steffen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
I, Barbara Steffen.
I, Katie Dugan.
I, Jean Estino.
I abstain, Ellen Mar.
I, Amanda Sani.
Okay, and Jane is not here. I have to say that spring sports have started, so we may be missing our student for a while. Next is the finance report.
Sure. I guess in the order in which it's presented, the first item has to do with revolving funds and the grants. In terms of revolving funds, we look a lot like last year. I mean, there's some differences in terms of collections, although since this was done, we've started to see money roll in for spring sports.
Yeah.
And the kindergarten collections have started as well for the second half. So we're starting to collect that. When we look at the grants, just a couple of things to mention. We have two deficits where we show a negative balance. One is the sped improvement, and that is really a result of an encumbrance. I can claim money as long as I expect to spend it in the next 30 days. And so as you look at that, there's a large encumbrance, $3,100. That's a purchase order we've issued. We don't have to pay it yet. It's going to be a while. It has to do with some training.
Okay.
And so that's fine. And then the other is the deficit has to do with early childhood, and that is both an encumbrance and a timing issue. There's an encumbrance of $2,000 and a $4,000 deficit, and on March 8th we received a grant payment of $3,900.
Okay.
So that was a timing issue. And I know that there's a lot of concern about grants in the state and how they're performing, and while I don't know what's going to happen next year, this year there's been business as usual once we got past that little hiccup where they decided they didn't really mean to pay for a school resource officer after all.
Yeah.
But other than that, they've been perhaps a little more strict than in years gone by about submitting bills, submitting claims monthly, and not having too much on hand. But they've been very good at paying.
I have a question.
Sure.
Metco
Yes.
jumped considerably from the previous months in terms of the allocation. Last month it was at 92.6, and now it's at 141.9 on the expended line.
Yes.
What would cause that, just because
We pay our transportation 4 times a year, and this included the payment for 2 transportation bills.
Okay.
Transportation's about $34,000.
Okay.
Annually or no?
Quarterly.
Just quarterly.
Quarterly.
Okay.
The bulk of the Metco grant goes to transportation.
Okay.
So that represents payment for half a year's worth of transportation.
Okay. Answers that. And then another question, and I should know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When something shows on the monthly report as encumbered, it doesn't carry over as encumbered to the following month if it's you only show it as encumbered once.
We carry it as encumbered until it's either canceled, or we pay the bill. So in a
Okay.
normal way, what happens is something becomes encumbered, and then the encumbrance drops off because it transfers to an actual expenditure.
Okay. So like on the one that you commented on the $3,100
Mhm.
on sped, that will carry until you get paid for that?
That will carry until I pay somebody. The
Okay.
encumbrance is
Okay,
not what
till
they
you-
owe me, it's what,
It's what, okay.
it's a purchase order
Right.
that's been issued to somebody else,
So until you pay it,
until I pay it.
and you're not gonna pay it till you get the grant?
No, I'm not going to pay it until actually somebody goes to the training that they've
Okay.
signed up for.
Okay.
Encumbrance is the way of putting the liabilities on the books, but the trigger to actually pay the liability could be, in this case, the actual use of
Presenting the bill.
use of the services, which hasn't happened yet.
In simple terms, it's when I'm presented with the bill.
Yeah,
So this represents a purchase order that's been issued. I say I want to buy this service.
yeah.
And then when the vendor performs and sends me an invoice, then I pay it. Then it moves from encumbrance to expended.
Yep. So there's varying times in terms of how long it might sit in encumbered,
Correct.
is the short answer. But it's a little bit like any accounts payable where you could look at it and say, is your accounts payable running at, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, and it kind of depends on when you're getting billed by the vendor for the
Yeah,
services.
and we pay, as you know, we pay bills at every school committee meeting. So
Yeah.
mostly twice a month. In this case, we paid 3 times a month. And I don't file a claim for it until I've either expended the money or expect to spend the money within the next 30 days.
We also encumber any of the expected courses. So if a teacher applies for a course at UMass Boston and our payout is $18.81, which is what we would get for 3 credits,
Mhm.
we encumber $18.81,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep it there until the end of the semester. Until we get the transcript and we have an actual payment that was made by a person, then we reimburse. So it can stay on the books for quite some time.
So I think everybody knows we have a set amount that we will pay for course reimbursement for teachers in the course of a year. So once they submit a course for approval, and once it's signed off, we issue a purchase order that sits on our books as encumbered, so that we don't exceed the amount that's in that line item. Towards the end of the year, we will start to go through those encumbrances and see if they're for real or if they can be relieved. If somebody who signed up for a course, for instance, and we're talking about courses, something's happened, they're not gonna complete the course, they decided not to take the course, they haven't told us, we've kept the encumbrance, but we will never, ever, ever pay it. And so then we start to relieve it, and the encumbrance goes back into available funds.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
None on this page.
No? Okay.
So the next are the budget summary reports. When I look at these budget summary reports and compare them to last year, I have to say that there's not a tremendous difference between them. We seem to be spending at the same amount. Our percentages of expenditure on salaries is higher than it was last year. Having said that, the 2 numbers in here that I've particularly looked at and feel comfortable with the salaries. We have enough money to cover our salaries. And out-of-district sped has not become a big issue this year at all. So those numbers are tracking just fine. Now, yeah, we still have to get to the end of the year, and I shouldn't say things like that out loud. Now that we've gotten through the budget season, and that's behind us, my job is to start to move money between accounts to take care of deficits, and then start to make some projections for what things will look like at the end of the year.
Right.
But, but at this time, it really isn't overall in the budget any item that's causing me to feel very uncomfortable. It should be just fine.
So I had noticed that on the sped tuitions, we had no expenditures last month because the expended was the same as the previous month. So we obviously didn't have to pay anything in sped tuitions.
We have been spending, if you're looking at this report, we've been spending out of the grant.
Out of the grant, okay.
Out of the grant.
Yeah.
And in fact, the circuit breaker is now exhausted, so future expenditures will all come out of appropriated funds.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what happened. And we just went and cleaned up the grant. We spent down to the amount that we could.
Kate?
I guess two questions.
Mhm.
You had mentioned year-end forecast, turning your attention to that in April. Do you guys have a sense as to when we might see, maybe in budget and finance, a first draft of what the year-end forecast might look like? I know in years past, it's been kind of a rolling document from one in April, one in May, and then, you know, a final look in June. But I just wanted to touch base with you and see what you were thinking in terms of timing.
Well, it's gonna be a rolling document throughout
Yep.
the entire year. And frankly, I don't have an answer for you, because I don't know how long it's gonna take me to do.
Okay.
I mean, it's somewhat of a learning curve here.
Yep.
But it will start next week.
Okay. Okay. I did have one question on transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that we're balancing the revolving account, utilization of the revolving account with utilization of operating budget. And I know that in January, we switched from paying our salaries for our bus drivers out of the operating budget, because that's now maxed out at
Right.
100 and whatever %. And we're now paying that out of revolving. The one thing that I just realized was that it looks like we haven't been charging our maintenance expenses to our operating budget, that we may have been charging all of our maintenance expenses year-to-date to our revolving. And I guess I wanted to see if you could take a quick look, because as I look at the maintenance
Mm-hmm.
expenses, we still have that $38,000 with nothing encumbered against it.
There's nothing encumbered against it, that I agree.
Yep. And we know that we've spent.
And I have to go back and look. We may well have been taking all of the maintenance expenses against the revolving fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in some senses, it's potato, but
Mhm.
I don't, like we've been talking all along, it's very hard when we're managing big budget variances that are positive or negative. And since we're now at that point in the year when we're going to rapidly drop
Right.
our transportation revolving balance, because we have monthly bus drivers, it makes sense if we need to move the expended bus maintenance year-to-date against where the budget is.
And the salaries are somewhat easier to predict, because we know what we pay for
Yeah.
daily runs on a weekly basis. And so much of the additional runs come from field trips that are student paid, or student activity accounts, or athletics. And again, the bus maintenance, I guess just to be clear, is kept track of separately on this document, so we know how much it costs. And then it's a question of where it's coming from. And in terms of maintenance, it's been I hate to say this out loud, a good year, where we had some work done, as you know, recently. None of it has been horribly expensive, and it's all been preventative. And in terms of preventative, we've not come across any issues or big problems. Had the brakes inspected and adjusted, and there's no need to do anything more than that at this point in time. I do chuckle though. One of the things that people said was, so we have the minibus, we're gonna spend $2,000 a year on maintenance for it. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thought. You know, we spent a lot last year to get it fixed. It's up and running. We've spent close to $1,200, and we're halfway through the year. And my guess is that you were right. We're going to spend close to $2,000 before this is all done this year. But it seems to be running fine and does get a lot of use.
Yeah. New set of tires for the minivan seems like a good investment.
And, you know, it just happens. I don't get it, but it just happens. But it's actually, it's a great bus for what we use it for. It transports, you know, those sports teams that don't have a lot of members.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier than trying to run one of the big yellow buses. It's designed to hold 77 students, but we're only moving a half a dozen. So,
But we haven't recorded mileage on it since November 20th. Are we talking about bus number one?
Bus one,
Mini?
minivan?
that's one any.
It's been at 93,481 according to the log since, January 14th, but then it only picked up 33 miles since November. So I'm wondering if the driver is giving you the right.
You know, I'll have to go back and look, although it's entirely possible that it's not been used a lot in the wintertime. You know, it's a great bus for the golf team, for Ritz.
Yeah, right. Which is before you came, John, we did have issues on recording mileage, keeping it up to date, so that could be one of.
Yep. I can certainly.
Because I was wondering why we spent money on a bus that appeared we hadn't used for quite some time, but you answered the question.
Yep.
Are the other two out to auction yet? Yep, no?
But I did hear back from the town that they're not interested in it, so now
Yeah, that was my next
we'll,
question.
put it out.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, don't have it.
Was it?
And now we come to the budget.
Hooray!
So, there was another budget that was distributed this evening.
Yep.
Look on the budget pages, it says, budget spreadsheet 31617, version 37. I think we've come to the end of the line. We finally have a budget that isn't any different in total dollar amount from what we talked about last time, but includes a couple of changes on some discrete line items. If you'll flip to page 14, we have decreased the salaries for sped ESPs, line item 235, and decreased the number of FTEs.
Decrease the number of FTEs.
Decrease the number of FTEs. If you look at page 18,
Sorry, what line was the last one?
the last one is page 14,
14, yep.
and it's line item 234.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a decrease of 47,950.
That's correct.
And then page 18, did you say?
Page 18. Line item 284. That line item has been decreased by $23,975 and 1 FTE. And so where did that money go? Well, if we go back to page 17, line item 277, which are classroom teachers, has increased by $24,455. You may remember we talked about adding a teacher that would be roughly 1/3 social studies and 2/3 sped. So that's the
That's the
2/3, that's the
That's the
1/3.
classroom teacher.
And we've increased the FTE there by 0.34.
We're very precise, 34.66 to
That's
a
right.
nice round 35.
Because we go down to line item 278, and 278 has increased by $47,950. And in fact, we've added 0.66 to the FTE count. And we did all of that without changing the bottom line.
Oh, that's great.
Just
Uh,
moving
Although it does,
$72,000.
it does come up with an overall decrease in the total number of FTEs, head count, if you will, has been decreased.
So now our line item budget matches the talking points that we've been using
Correct.
to talk with the community. Yep. That's great.
And there were no other changes in the budget from what we talked about the last several times that we were together.
Does anybody have any more questions on this? No? Okay, then we could move to a vote.
My
Um,
sincere hope.
So could we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 18 Cohasset Public Schools budget?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, roll call, please.
I think, if I could interrupt for a
Yes.
second, I think I'd ask your vote to contain an amount.
Oh, okay, yes, you're right. You are absolutely correct, sorry. Been a while since I've done this.
Well, we only do this once a year, I understand.
So in the amount of $18,895,656. So if we could amend the motion to include that. Could I have an amendment to the motion, please? You can just move it.
So moved. Sorry.
And
Brain cramp.
a second.
So seconded.
So,
Totally second.
yeah, there you go.
Totally second.
All right, so could we have a roll call vote, please?
I, Barbara Steffen.
I, Katie Dugan.
I, Gina Stino.
I, Eleanor.
I, Lily Sonny.
Congratulations.
This is
Good job.
great.
Excellent job.
This is
Boy,
great.
this is
So,
such a good experience.
could I please have a copy of this most recent version? Because I need to forward it along to advisory along with our, executive summary, because they'll be looking for it, for our meeting in April.
There was one, there's something right there.
No, I don't want a hard copy.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you could just send it to me electronically, that's fine.
Yeah, I think Jennifer did send us a copy
Yes.
Electronically.
Of the
Of the
whole
new one.
budget?
Of
This
the-
one,
oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
this budget doc, of this
Oh, okay,
doc,
wait a minute.
Just today.
just today.
Okay, all right, I'll look
Yeah.
for it then. Don't worry
Earlier
about
this
it.
Oh, with your
afternoon.
amendment, with your comments.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay.
I guess, just two quick thoughts. One relative to advisory, if you don't mind in your cover note, just making it clear that our intent is to review the PowerPoint executive summary with them.
Right.
And the line item detail is
Yeah.
really
For background
backup.
for them,
for background.
but we're not going to review line by line in their meeting.
Exactly. That would be fantastic.
Sure.
Second is a comment that Ellen made coming out of special town meeting. Is it possible for you and Louise to talk to Chris about having our vote on the budget be recorded in Article 3? They've
Sure.
done it in the past where it's been, capital budget votes on, such and such section. If there could be something that annotates that school committee voted on the school budget, 5-0 in favor.
So we want it on the warrant.
Yeah, I believe it's currently Article 3 is the operating budget, but right now they only have, I just checked.
Yeah, they're
they-
changing things.
Well, they just have placeholders right
Yeah.
now for advisory and selectmen's vote, and it would be great to start the trend of indicating the school committee's vote where it's
Sure.
relevant.
There-
Okay.
Yeah, there should be 3
They're definitely, we should
Yeah.
definitely be included in that.
on the sped, article and
Yep.
on capital.
Right.
On the sped, since I'm kind of the master, Jen and I have been the master, I already did that.
You did? Okay, all right.
I
I'm
put our,
just-
I put our
yeah.
vote in, so that it was clear that we voted 5-0 in favor of it.
Okay.
But on Article 3, when I looked at the most recent version that Jen had circulated, it was the typical, for the operating budget, was the typical just 2 committees.
Yeah.
And I think we want to change that this year to reflect the 3
Absolutely.
committees that have a say
Absolutely.
in the budget making process.
Okay, so it's the budget, it's the sped stabilization, and what was the
Capital.
capital requests? Okay.
This is, you're not gonna reprint this, are you? It's gonna stay labeled draft?
For now it is.
Okay.
I think it stays draft until town meeting.
Oh, until the
No,
meeting?
well, my assumption was that the cover would change, and instead of saying, requested,
Oh,
it'd be
right.
voted by the school committee as of this date. And the draft is, in my opinion, is now gone.
Right.
This is your budget.
Yeah, it's not a draft.
It's not a draft budget anymore, it's a school committee's document.
Then I would just recommend that to also, on your table of contents, where it has proposed FY 18 with February 15th, if that changes as
Into
well.
draft, yes, yes.
In all of these pages that say draft.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally don't need another copy, but
No.
we wanna have a clean, approved.
Do you wanna tell Jennifer that herself?
I could leave a message, I won't be in tomorrow.
No, I'm telling her.
No, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but, I mean, if you wanna wait till town meeting,
No, they want
that's
two
fine.
people telling them to say.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I just think
No,
we.
no more printing, it's just an electronic copy
Yeah,
that could be
just like-
circulated and
Yeah,
posted on
and I
the,
can-
on the web, so,
Right.
Yeah.
website.
And
Email
we'll
her
ask you
right
to
now.
do a search for the word proposed, so we
Yes.
don't miss any.
Exactly.
We get to put another check mark on the back too, where
Yes.
you voted.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly, on the back page.
On the back page with the-
Exactly.
with the schedule.
Check.
So I wanted to say proposed
Excellent.
budget?
No,
No.
no,
No.
it's approved.
Approved.
I don't know about my colleagues, but, I would imagine the printing of these is rather expensive, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with the stapled, double-sided, until we get a final copy.
The
But-
printing is on the same machine, it's
Oh, it's, okay,
just longer paper.
okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't send
Okay.
it out at all.
okay.
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 If you were sending it out, I'd say,
No.
don't bother, okay.
But if you think we're sending it out, have them press it.
Our new copiers. That's our new copier.
That's-
a great.
Yeah.
Okay, so, just looking for something, sorry. That's not gonna cooperate, I've got a bouncing ball here, so never mind. So we're ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so next is school committee comments and communications, and I will lead off by saying that, some of us attended the spelling bee in one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great event, lots of fun. Really, I personally love going to that event. Almost everybody's happy. But we've got some pretty amazing spellers in the school district, and it was a very fun afternoon. Joan Moschino came,
Yeah.
and we had a photo op, Louise and I. So,
I saw that on Facebook.
did you post the picture on Facebook?
Joan did.
Oh, okay. All right, then I forwarded it to you, the picture, so maybe we could have it put on the district
Sure.
page.
You love the publicity. It was on her I guess since I've liked her Facebook page, it showed up in my newsfeed.
Oh, okay.
She loved it. She thought it was, she just had a great time.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was nice of her to stop by.
Yes. She came, her husband accompanied her, and he was the official photographer.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was great.
Yeah.
We had some great conversation. Also, alternative energy, obviously Amanda attended most of that, but I had circulated some information on the possible benefits that we might reap should our next Green Communities grant come through at the amount that's proposed, which is upwards of $252,000. So, it's good to know that we're on the agenda to receive some of these items, at least until town hall's being built. Because I'm sure that some of that money will go for green initiatives at town hall once that starts, which is great, because we've been the beneficiaries of some great things through these grants, so,
So,
anyway.
I have a question on that. So does
Yes.
that mean then that some of the original items they had designated for phase 2 of the grant are gonna go away, and that the list you circulated is the current list?
That is, I haven't seen the full list.
Okay.
Mary Jo said that she would circulate it once she got it, in a format that
Okay.
was readable, because she said that she had to literally read the application with a magnifying glass.
Okay.
But we did have some help putting together the grant by someone who was very skilled in doing that. And he helped with the prioritization of items that are going to be covered under the grant, so that they were in the right order. I guess there's a right way to do the grant and there's a wrong
Okay.
way, as
Okay.
there is with every grant.
Okay.
So he helped them put together in the right order so that it would be, looked at favorably,
Yep.
more favorably. Did I capture that
Yes.
conversation
Yep.
right?
Okay, oh, so you said, so on your list it had middle high school HVAC controls upgrade, so then I guess I was looking at their meeting minutes, which then include, photocell daylight controllers, middle high school building shell envelope improvements, installation of door, window hatch, skylight weather stripping, sealing around doors and window frame gaps.
And I don't know where those items fall, Ellen, I really can't tell you.
Yeah, no, I think
That-
from their minutes it falls under the HVAC control umbrella.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's probably all part of
Part of
that,
it, yeah,
because it is
yeah.
quite a large amount of money.
Yeah.
It's like $157,000.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm glad you pulled the minutes, because when I was reading HVAC control, I thought they were literally targeting the controls, but it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
Because I was worried that when they were talking about the Osgood and Deer Hill HVAC controls, we've already
Right.
spent a lot of money trying to get those control boxes to work correctly, but it sounds like it's back to, there's many components to it, and some of it has to do with, as you were saying, sealing gaps.
Yeah.
And just like there are with many systems, controls, for lack of a better word, to just keep using the control word, there are parts that break.
Yeah.
And just like there were with the phone system, there are parts that can't be replaced, depending on how old they are. So
Yeah.
I think that we've been holding things together and making them work, but this is actually replacement of some of those items that really are past their useful life. So,
Okay.
okay? Any other reports?
I had just 3 quick ones. So after capital budget, I went to master plan, and for the next couple months, we're just gonna be in the data gathering, data synthesizing phase. Once we get sort of through that as a committee, because it is kind of a committee that is formed by a number of different people, including members of the planning board. Once we get through that phase, I think I mentioned we're gonna hire a consultant to work with us, and at that time, if town meeting approves, we will have a full-time planner on board, so we'll actually have 2 resources that can really help us write the plan, but for now, we're kind of getting ourselves organized and up to date. We've been going through kind of the 2004 plan, and we've been digging into the work that's been done in phase 1. I will circulate to everyone, just so you have it, summary of the visioning process that was done last year. So there was a session that was done at Wolcott Commons that was run by the MAPC that basically had community members come in on a Saturday and answer a series of questions, a lot about opportunities and strengths, and that was one thing that was done. Secondarily, in the fall, they did a survey, Survey Monkey, that went out to the whole community, and they had pretty good response rate. I think it was ultimately like 10% of adults in town, which is, as we know, a decent number. I wanted to circulate the summary because the schools do come up quite a bit in the discussion. It's listed both as a strength and in some areas as a challenge. A lot of it, to me, feels a bit superficial because we're collecting it from the whole community, a number of people who are no longer necessarily involved. But I think it's important, and I'll point out when I circulate it to people, there was quite a bit of discussion under challenges, under comments like schools are crowded because of overdevelopment of condo houses, school class sizes are rising, that's going to challenge us in maintaining the excellence of the school system. Class sizes are too large, schools are strained, too many students, schools are at capacity. So there's a lot of
Where did they get their information?
well, and again, this is the community's community's perception. So
Well, the
what-
word has been circulated in the last couple of years that was going on, but it doesn't seem to necessarily be.
and part of my
completely
It must be,
accurate.
it could be just a lag in where discussion was last year, because there were, I mean, some people were predicting 80 new students coming from new developments for
Yeah.
like this year, so we didn't really have great numbers. No
well,
one did, it seemed. Well,
and
or
I think-
there were
I think
different
part of
ones
it-
mentioned at different places.
and you don't know who, this could have been a person that hasn't had kids in the district and is
Right.
just listening to, gosh, who
Chatter.
knows, chatter.
Right.
But hopefully part of my role is to bring the actual facts of what's happening in the district.
No, that's great.
So I will circulate it, because I do think it's just important for the schools to have that perspective. I did make sure that the full committee understood that we had just done a strategic plan, because there was some discussion about, do we need a chapter on education in our master plan? And I said, no, we've got a strategic plan, so I circulated that, so. At some point, we may get invited to come and update everybody on that, but part of my job is just making sure that they know that there's other pieces of information out there.
Right.
So I'll circulate the visioning summary for everyone, just so you can read it. I'll give you a sense of what people are saying about the community in general and the schools. The second thing I wanted to do was, I had circulated this electronically, but this is just the advisory that finally came through, and it's a short and sweet half a page, 2/3 of a page from DESE. And to be honest, there was nothing in here that I think surprised either John or I. Actually, I think the shocker was a little bit the brevity of the advisory. So we have the guidance that we've been looking for from DESE. Relative to the MMA Sped Stabilization Fund. Again, there's nothing in here that changes my perspective on how we think it's going to operate. It reconfirms a number of things that we already knew from the actual legislation. So I just wanted to share everybody, this was kind of our last box that we wanted to check, and
Absolutely.
it's been checked.
Good.
Okay?
Good.
And then last but not least, just a public service announcement. The Cohasset Safe Harbor is having a open meeting on Monday. They're having a speaker come in, the Walpole Chief of Police, to talk about the social impact of the new recreational marijuana law. I think I will try and slip over after capital budget if I can, but just want to let people know that is
I
happening.
just received that today to push it out to schools, so.
Yeah,
Good.
exactly. It's great. That was it.
Right, and everybody knows that on the agenda for capital budget on Monday, they're scheduled to vote on the requests.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll all go to that meeting and they will vote on the requests, so we will have some closure on those items, that would be great. It's been a long process, so.
I've got it marked on my calendar, I should be good to go, so I
Yeah.
don't think we all
I'm
need to,
going.
we all need to sit
I'm
there,
going.
but,
Try to go, I should make it, I guess Mondays are tough, but I will get there.
okay.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
can all
It's
divide
on
and conquer,
there.
don't,
It's
yeah,
fine.
it's one of those where, it's nice to have closure on some of these things, which is
Right.
why I go.
And I'm fine with not posting it as a joint meeting, because I don't anticipate that there'll be much opportunity for us to discuss anything. If we do have a quorum, we'll just have maybe one or two members make comments.
Speak if necessary.
If we're asked questions, or the superintendent can answer also.
It's surprising sometimes if you get you get the final question, are you asking for X amount? Like, yes, we are.
Yeah. Final answer.
Final answer.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Barb.
Amanda and I met, superintendent and for our policy subcommittee.
Yeah.
So we'll have policies coming up for, next month. One of the main ones we have to update soon is just after we did our, administering medicines to student mask did an update, probably like a couple of months after we did ours, so we just have to update that, so, that'll be simple. There's, let's see, some of the other ones, are just some minor changes, but we reviewed, some that related to BYOD technology and, related to, care and damage and that kind of thing, so.
Great.
We reviewed those, and Amanda has a couple others having to do with making sure allergies, we went through and made sure allergies have been addressed in our
Yep.
policies, and that's most of them, right?
Yep.
And then, my only other update is just, the Supreme Court had their ruling today on a SPED case that a lot of people were watching, and it was a unanimous 8-0 decision that, basically overturned what the 10th District Court, I guess, was saying, and it just basically said that schools must do more than provide a merely more than de minimis education program to a student with a disability, so lots of people were eagerly anticipating a decision on that.
John,
So-
copied that, article, in newsprint, I have it inside, if anybody wants a copy, we can make it.
Oh, that'd be
Or
great.
John can, cause he was so good the first time. But we do have the copy of that.
And if I remember correctly, the case was that the parents landed out placing the student in a environment where they thought the student could actually thrive, and the whole case centered around the district was saying, well, no, they were thriving enough in the environment the district was willing to.
Kind of like what level is required for a student, with special needs, and they're saying, it basically, the 10th court district, I think, was basically saying, like, you only have to do a very minimal amount, like, that wasn't equal essentially to what you would expect for a child in a regular education classroom to be achieving year to year. So, is that a decent, summary of it?
I think, I think we're back to
Sort of
trying to define
fairly minimal.
what is an appropriate education.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's, so the standard has been, federal standard for some time, and the Massachusetts standard for a shorter time, has been a free and appropriate education. And I think we all felt we knew what the rules of the road were, and again, I don't mean to speak for what Colorado believes is an appropriate education as opposed to what Massachusetts believes, because there was no universal standard.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna hinge around what is the meaning of appropriate.
And appropriate is tied to some level of achievement in this case, right?
It's, yeah, and it's specifically to what's looking at the specific child and what that specific child could be expected to do, really. I mean, it's looking at the goals set out on their IEP and what that student could be able to achieve.
I have the interpretation here. It says the National Education Association obviously applauds the Supreme Court unanimous decision affirming that IDEA is intended and must be interpreted to provide children with disabilities with an individualized education program that is reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. And that was to debunk the de minimis catch, that it has to be equal in the light of the child's circumstances. And the NEA urged the court to adopt exactly that approach in the amicus brief in the Andrew case, which is what they did. It's a win for most vulnerable students and helps ensure the promises Congress made to them under the Individual with Disabilities Act, where no matter where they live, the fact that Supreme Court was unanimous is a great thing. So, yeah.
This is kind of a sentence here that's useful. It's in summary also. It says today's opinion held that appropriate goes further than what the lower courts had held. And the summary of the specific case, just read it. It's the case centered on a child with autism and attention deficit disorder whose parents removed him from the public school in 5th grade. He went on to make better progress in private school, and from what I was reading, the child apparently made pretty significant progress at the school, and his parents argued that the IEP plan provided by the public school is inadequate, and they sued to compel the school district to pay his private school tuition. So,
That's great news.
Good. Okay, so if we're ready to move on, we have the approval of the minutes for Monday, February 27th, 2017. And this was for the joint meeting with Cohasset's Capital Budget Committee.
yep.
Does anybody have any questions or any comments on the content? No? Okay. Then do I have a motion to accept the minutes of Monday, February 27th, 2017 for the joint meeting with the Cohasset Capital Budget Committee?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then the second set of minutes is for Thursday, March 16th, 2017. And it's the minutes of our joint meeting with Cohasset Board of Selectmen, where we presented our executive summary of the FY18 Cohasset Public Schools operating budget. Do I have any comments on that? No?
Nope.
Okay, then could I have a motion to approve the minutes of Thursday, March?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Follow-up and updates?
The only follow-up is I'm neglecting, I'm
The follow-ups?
neglectful in the following up on the follow-ups. So,
I wouldn't
and that
lose
was a
any
mouthful.
I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
I will
You've
have,
done
I will have an update for the next meeting.
Okay.
They're all.
No,
They're all done, everything's followed up on.
Everything's
No, you've done a great job of keeping us honest and on top of all of these things that somehow used to slip through the cracks, so.
The fact that we're down to one page.
One page.
is-
What was it, it was 4 or 5
No,
at the beginning?
I think we got to like 2 1/4.
No, I think it was more at the very beginning, when you first started. Maybe we checked some off immediately, but, so, anyway.
We're doing well.
I personally am very appreciative of your efforts, thank
Yes.
you.
I personally am too.
Thank you.
Do we wanna make a motion? So, topics not reasonably anticipated, the only topic I have that was not reasonably anticipated was the need for an executive session, which will be brief, just an update on strategy related to contract negotiations with union personnel, bus drivers. So if I could have a motion to move into executive session for that purpose, we will reconvene in public after that session, strictly to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, roll call, please.
Aye, Barbara Stafford.
Aye, Katie Dugan.
I, Gina Stino,
Hi, Ellen Mar.
Aye, Amanda Soni.
and you drew the short straw tonight. This is, I think this is an all-time record, isn't it, Tracy?
It is.